man with a beard.
Good evening, and welcome to Vintage Key Studio with me, Roger van der Beek. We are sponsored by Beauty Beard. Hello. Today I'm going to be showing you the Hill Audio Concept 200 mixing console from the 1980s. This was built in around 1986. I got it fairly broken from a guy who I won't mention, who told me that it had been serviced, but it wasn't. I plugged it in and 3 channels caught fire. Luckily with this thing, you can still operate it when a channel is on fire, because you can just undo a channel and it carries on working. The sound you are hearing now is coming from this beautiful Sontronics Orpheus microphone. The sound you are hearing is going through the desk. So I just removed this thing, and I don't think you would have heard any discernible noise or anything when I pulled this out. Anyway, I'm going to put it back in. Actually, I'll just show you very quickly the innards of it. This desk's got 28 channels, all mono channels, and they've got a quite nice mic preamp here, but you've got these little electrolytic capacitors here, which are used as sort of blocking capacitors for DC. There's 10 of these little ICs, which I like to call the spiders, but they're actually NE5532s. They're really, really good quality, and they're quite common in all sorts of audio equipment. Neve equipment uses them as well. I've gone through and I've replaced all of the these little things that I like to call octopuses, even though they've only got 2 legs. We've got these little tantalum capacitors in here, and there's a little black one there. I haven't seen that one before, and a blue one and a yellow one. That's the mic preamp part there. Then we have the tape input. So the line or the mic is basically around this area. I won't go into all the details of where everything is. Then we've got phantom power that comes from one of these pins here, because it's modular, so it plugs into the desk in here. And there's phantom power. I can't remember which pin it comes up, but it comes up one of these pins up here. It goes all the way along here around the side, and then goes across here. I think it's pin 6 there, which joins this piece of board to this piece of board, and then it goes over here to this little link. It's basically a piece of wire, but it's in the shape of a resistor. So it's like 0 ohms, which means there's no resistance. There's just a piece of wire. But the top link there has got phantom power on it. So phantom power is used for microphones, like condenser microphones, that need a bit of power, basically, to increase, to work the onboard amplifiers. They have little preamps in the microphones themselves. This Orpheus one has a mic preamp. In fact, it has a special one that increases the output by 10 dB, which is very unusual. Usually you just get a 10 dB, what they call a pad, where it reduces the sound level by 10 dBs, but this actually increases it. So it's using this phantom power to power internal preamp inside there. We've also got selectable polar pattern switch there. So if I put that down, at the moment we've got sound that's just coming from, if I go around the back there, you can hear that there's nothing, well there is, but it's not direct. No sound there. So that's called the cardioid, because it looks a bit like a heart. Looks actually more like a bottom to me. And then this one here, you have to wait for a few seconds because it's probably just gone click. So this one now is what they call a figure of 8 pattern, and you've got the sound in front of you and the sound behind you there. So if I continue to click round, so you should hear that when I move around this, there's less of me at this angle because the sound is being picked up here and here, and more of me at this angle. But if I put it back on, I've now disappeared, or I've become very, very dull. Very dull. Hello, hello, hello. Oh, and it's also got an omni. Picks up, in theory, nearly all of around the whole thing, so I could just sort of walk around and not be worried about which direction I was supposed to be talking into. But anyway, that's beside the point because we're not here to talk about this, even though it is a beautiful microphone. So let's just put it back on the bum. Let me just put this channel strip back in. Simple as that. Very easy. If only everything in life is that easy. So the architecture of this desk is very straightforward. It's like a usual desk. The input is either a mic input or a line input, which shares the same circuit, or it flips over and you can also have a tape return, because it was obviously designed in the days of tape, which I actually use these days for the outputs from the I've got Antelope Audio digital audio converters and all that gubbins coming out the back of the computer, being powered by Logic Audio from dear Apple. So it's got inputs up here. You can control the. In fact, what I can do is I can control things and talk to you at the same time, and you can hear the sound of me altering the sound as I talk to you. So if we're looking at channel 12, that's where I'm coming in on this microphone at the moment. Up here we've got the microphone trim control here, so you can turn it up quite a lot, and it will quite nicely distort. These preamps are really nice, but they don't have a massive amount of volume or level. So some microphones, like ribbon microphones, I usually use. I've got an old-fashioned Vortexian mixer up there, which I'll show you in another video. But yeah, most of your average sort of condenser mics and dynamic mics in this studio work through here. And then you've also got this tape return button here, which will, if I had a tape or a recording playing at the moment, I could flip it over. I press that button because it's flipped the circuit over to tape. Then you have the EQs, or the equalization setting. Now this mixer, I really like it because it's got 6 fixed EQ bands starting from 12.5K. So if I make a sound like a snake, you can hear that as I'm hissing. You can also hear that I've sort of removed. So you can basically plus or minus 12 dB of the 12.5K or kilohertz frequency, and then we've got the same here but with a 4.5, so that's like a really sort of middly sound, and then we've got a 1.5K, which is a nice one to get a bit of feedback there, and then we've got a 500 hertz, which is a bit more bassy, and then 150 hertz, which is even more bassy, and then we have a 60 hertz one, which is very bassy. You've got to be very, very deep to make that one affect. And then we've got this really nice addition, which is like a sweep. It even says sweep there. There used to be one next to it called Sooty, but that fell off. This one will enable you to pick a frequency and then boost or cut it. You can hear it working as if I sweep. If I've put the level control of this down to minus 24, and if I sweep from 50 hertz up to 5 kilohertz, you should be able to hear that it gives a pleasing phasing effect. If I just go, hello, can you hear the phasing effect on my voice? And that's just sort of you choosing a different frequency and then it cuts it. It doesn't work quite so well on the boost one, although I'm not going to do that now because we're coming over the monitors here and it'll feedback. But anyway, a very, very musical EQ. It's not sort of like a kind of your average clinical cold EQ you might get on certainly on a computer anyway. There's also a very good, very useful button called EQ out, and that will remove that EQ part of the circuit out of the signal path. So you've got the sound coming in here with the EQ out. It basically gets out of there, and then it will go via. In fact, I don't think it's the way it's set out on here isn't exactly the order that it flows in, but I'll just for argument's sake presume as it is. So we've got the input, then we've got the EQ, which is out or in with a bit of on it, and then it goes on. Certainly on the channel strips here, you've got the auxes, or auxiliaries, aux sends, so you can send a, like it's like, got a sort of like a tap. It's like opening a tap, and it will send a signal out of that channel to the socket of the aux 1. And there's actually a master control for aux 1 over here as well. So if you've got something plugged into aux 1, which I have, I've got the headphone feed plugged into aux 1, then we can tap into this channel and send that signal to aux 1 without affecting the main channel itself. And there's actually 8 auxes on this thing. You can either have 1 and 2, or 5 and 6, and 3 and 4, or 7 and 8. And then there's a pre button, which means that you can take the aux signal from the pre-fader. So basically it means that the signal will be going down to here, and if you move the fader up and down, it won't affect the signal going to the auxes. But if you take that out, then it will then affect the signal going to the auxes. Whenever I say aux, it reminds me of the great auk, which was a New Zealand bird that's become extinct. If only they had aux 1, aux 2, aux 3, aux 4, the great auk. So yeah, I said earlier that these individual channels, they're all mono, meaning that they're just like one signal. So like stereo is 2 signals that you usually hear through 2 speakers or 2 headphones or whatever. So mono is 1, and what happens is it goes through here and then it gets to this stereo matrix where it's divided into 2, and you can use this green knob here called a pan pot. So if you're actually mixing it in stereo, you can send it or have it anywhere in between the 2. I'm not using this desk as a mixing desk as such. This is more of a tracking desk we use here, because mixes tend to get done within Logic, and sometimes some stuff does get put through here and we process it and do all sorts of things with it. I do mix kind of sort of from here up, really, do sort of a little mix on here. But basically all the sounds that we make in the studio come through the desk, and it sort of adds just like a kind of a je ne sais quoi to the sound. I nearly swallowed my tongue then. Yes, so then once it's gone past the pan pot, you've got the button, and you've also got the PFL, which is pre-fade listen. So that's like a kind of a solo button, I suppose. That will, and that again, that's mainly to do with if you're doing stereo mixing or whatever. You've also got these buttons here. You've got a mix button, which again for sort of sending it to the stereo mix bus, which is controlled over here. If I move these wires by this left and right control, which basically sends whatever's coming down this channel or any of the channels to the mix bus, the stereo mix bus, which is the master left and right out. It also goes to the main sort of speakers as well. As I say, we're not really using it to mix with as such. We're using it to route signals. And the way I do it on here, it's sort of the same way that you would have done it with tape, is the signal comes through here, and you can see on here we've got these assign 1 to 8, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And in tiny writing on the buttons themselves, you've got 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So the sound that's coming down here is being sent to the groups 11 and 12, and this is actually going into the 12, which on this desk is very complicated, but basically it's input 36. So if I move this fader down while I'm talking, then I disappear. You can hear me in the background there through another microphone, and then I move it back up again, and I'm back again. And you can see on the Logic there, this is coming from input 36, which is from this group fader, and then if I push the fader down on the mixer, I disappear. You can see it's just disappeared there. And then if I push it back up again, you can see it's come back. And again, similar to the auxes on here and the great auk, you can have either assignment to channels if you wanted to, so you could send them to all of those 8 group channels there, or if you press this button, it sends it to all of the other 9 to 16 channels. you would just assign a one channel to one group, and then from here, say in the days of tape, that would go to individual tape tracks. So this would work really well with a 16-track 16-track tape recorder. I've got an 8-track tape recorder here, which we'll be doing another video on at some point. That will be using this as well. I think I've talked enough about the workings of the thing. I should just say a little bit more about Hill Audio themselves. The mixer was designed by Malcolm Hill. As far as I'm aware, Hill Audio has now become Hill Pro Audio because a Chinese company called Hill Audio borrowed the name and didn't give it back. So it's Hill Pro Audio now. But this was, made in the 80s by Malcolm Hill, and I think Malcolm Hill had been designing mixers during the 60s and 70s. This sounds very 70s, this desk, I have to say, compared to sort of some of the other things I've mucked about with. And it kind of looks quite 70s as well, I think. But they made a Concept 200, which is this one, and they also made a Concept 400, which was like almost like double the size, had 48 up to 48 channels on it. But they all had pretty much the same electronics inside. And as I say, all of these channels here are interchangeable fairly. You can move them around and swap them about if you wanted to. These ones up here are different because you have the group section up here it also doubles up as a sort of an auxiliary mix. You can assign all the different channels to the different VU meters up there as well. Not all of them work on here. This side of the mixer, I've added some bits. There's a spreader here that I designed a while ago. I didn't design it. I nicked it from an old Mullard book. And I've got a couple of other little switches and things that I've added there just to make things a bit easier. But this side here, I will talk about in another video because it's a bit complex to go into all at once. So what I suggest you do is just look at the picture of the lobster. Very quickly, so you've got that's the master mix fader, which is a Penny and Giles fader, so it's a very, very high quality one. As far as I know, these aren't Penny and Giles ones, but they're pretty damn good. You don't get any crackle or anything from these. And then you've got the things like mono switch and mute switch and more PFL, pre-fade listen switches. You've got an auxiliary master section up there, so that's basically aux 1 to aux 8 but no great aux. You've got monitor switches here, so you can, or speaker switches, so you can either have there's basically 3 outputs on the back of the desk that you can send to different sets of speakers. I've got 3 set up here, so I've got these JBL monitors, the big ones, and then I've got these Yamaha ones on another one, and the little Auratone speakers on the other. And then you've got various other sort of assignments of inputs and outputs and things, so you can hear the mix from here with this button. And this button here comes from the 2-track input, which is basically would be from a master tape, like a stereo tape recorder, but at the moment we've got it coming from out of an analog limiter that's coming from the DAW. And there's an alternate one there, and then there's one to just listen to the auxes. Oh, one other thing I forgot to say, on all of these channels there's these switches at the top which I've just put on there because there's insert, send and receive points on the back, so you can insert a compressor or something or other, or another EQ. And this desk didn't have a bypass switch, so these are basically just bypass switches I've installed on here, which are really useful. So if you've got like a terrible sounding effect on there, like a guitar pedal or something plugged in as an insert, you can quickly just switch it out, so you can just hear the normal sound. You don't have to listen to this thing. But it's useful for comparing the 2 sounds. For quite a substantial mixer like this, you need quite a substantial power supply. And the power supply for this mixer is just down here on the rack here. So this is the only place on the whole thing where it actually says the name of the console. As you see, you've got LEDs there to tell you that, so that's plus 48 volts is obviously it's the phantom power supply. You've got an auxiliary power supply which I think is 12 volts. So you've got a positive and a minus positive and a negative power supply. So plus 18 and minus 18 together is 36 volts, pretty much. Then there's a big switch there that you switch it off. I had to completely overhaul this because it's got huge capacitors inside that look like baked bean tins, and they were bulging when I actually opened it up, which means that they were kind of well past their shelf life and about to catch fire. So anyway, so this all works. I can now switch it on and off without it going... I think I've done enough talking now, so I'll just give you a bit of a quick demo of some sounds coming into the thing. First of all, the piano. I don't need to speak for this, I'll just go there, please. That piano sound's coming through these two channels here. There's a bit of EQ on it to give the piano a bit of a boost in the bass. While we're here, I'll just show you as well. I've got these channels set up for, there's 8 channels here set up for the drums, which are over there, which I'll give you a quick blast on in a second. I've also got some limiters, analog VCA limiters, plugged into each of these channels to kind of just, well, to limit it really, just to make it sound nice. So anyway, I'll just play a bit of drums as well, and you can hear what it sort of all sounds like there. These are Pro Audio T-Towns from Asda. They cost £3. I got the idea from Ringo. We have a set of headphones here, which is connected to a small headphone amplifier. Well, don't need to use that now, but that's for doing things like playing along to stuff, playing along to a click, or if in this room we often have live groups in here, so we can kind of hear each other through these. And these would be, the signal going into these would come from the auxes that I've just been talking about. So aux 1, if you're ever here and you need to use it, it's aux 1 and aux 4. But remember to plug it in down here, otherwise it won't work. And anyway, I'll just play you some drums. So basically I've got 8 microphones set up here. I've got 2 on the kick drum, got an Audix on the sort of a close one, and then we've got a large diaphragm condenser there as well. Then we've got a mic on the top of the snare, a mic below the snare, just where the strings are under the snare, or the snare is. Then we've got one on the tom, one on the floor tom, and I don't usually bother with masses of other things like sort of overheads and cymbal mics. I don't really like that sound for it. I mean, I do if people want it, but I tend not to bother. So I've just got a Coles ribbon mic up here, which sort of it gets like a nice sort of pingy sound off the cymbal. That's quite nice. Again, as I was saying, this going through the desk usually comes out quite quiet, so you need to usually put it through one of the old preamps or one of the other ones I've got here, which are a bit more powerful. Anyway, here's some half-assed drumming from me. Imagine living next door to me. Anyway, that's the drums. Obviously, I usually like to get someone who can play them nicely in. But if I can't do that, then I end up doing it myself. And then usually spending quite a long time editing. But I've learned how to play drums by listening to, is it Michael Giles from King Crimson? And he did some fantastic drum fills, like... He didn't hit the microphone though. But he was very, very good. Very good. And I nowhere near as good as him. Him and the guy from, is it Pip Pyle, whatever his name is, from Gong. But I will leave you with the drum bit from The Court of the Crimson King, played with a really bad drum roll that I can't quite do. In fact, I won't leave you with that. I will leave you with a very badly played 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. I think it was Steve Gadd who did it originally. I don't do it correctly, I've been told by various drummers, but tough. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video of me gabbling on about this thing in here. It's a lovely analog mixer from the 1980s that didn't cost me very much, and it's only taken me 4 years to fix. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe and smash everything like they tell you to do. Go on Bandcamp. We've got a Bandcamp, vintagekeysrecords.bandcamp.com. Loads of really good stuff on there. I'm going to get back on with my beauty beard now, so I'll see you next time. Bye for now.